Hey everyone, I'm Clue, and welcome back to some more Flesh and Blood discussion. So, we're not actually continuing the Living Legend discussion just yet, right? I'm waiting till tomorrow for the last bit of points to come through, so we can see if anyone else sort of scrapes through and hits LL, and then we can go through the comments and some of the other Reddit posts that are of interest. But there is something worth mentioning, and that is the end of an Ira, right? So, Ira hitting LL is quite substantial if you think about the place in the game she served for her whole life, right? She was the welcome deck, she was the learn to play deck, she's the print to play deck, and all that is, well, up in the air, right? Whether or not they keep those sort of systems in place for people to learn, or if they do come up with a new tutorial style hero. Very interesting to think about and, you know, potentially look forward to. But again, we'll touch more on that probably tomorrow with the Living Legend discussion. What I want to jump in today is this post on Reddit. So, green thumb here. FaB is running off new players. James, come on. Yeah, so this is a very interesting post with some actual decent points and a little bit of truth to it, at least from my perspective. So I do think it's worth discussing, right? So we'll give it a read. I haven't touched the comments just yet because I will assume that the comments are very controversial, right? They are either side of everything that's stated here. And I mean, there's 88. We're probably not going to go through them all. We'll just nitpick. But anyway, I have started FaB and I love it so much. The community has been fantastic. There are a few major problems that I haven't seen addressed. I could be wrong. Link me if I am. So number one, the efforts by James and the parent company of FaB are an objective failure. There are millions of roads they could go down to generate more views and players. They do none of them. Their YouTube channel is a ghost town of mediocre content. His keynote speech is the most unprofessional produced content I've ever seen by a respectable company. Hype videos, lore videos, community videos was fantastic, but everything else I've seen has been forgettable at best. So we'll go into them, I think, point by point, rather than reading the whole thing. I mean, feel free to read it. I'm not going to change the page or anything like that. But I do agree with this, right? To some extent. So the level that LSS and James have maintained or produced, you know, extra content towards the game is an objective failure, right? They leave a lot of it to the community aspect, and it's clear that their prerogative at the moment is the competitive scene, which is fine. It's the biggest area of growth. It is their main medium for bringing in new players, even though it's not the best pathway, right, that a lot of us think of when we want new players to come. Just dump them straight into the competitive scene, right? It can deter a lot of people, but nonetheless, it is still their biggest area of growth and is obviously what they are funneling the most resources into, right? PvE has been put on the back burner for another year, and again, overall, even amongst Blitz Living Legend, Classic Constructed is getting by far the greatest extent of further support. And this whole year is being shaped up as tackling the Living Legend system and reshaping things, and again, focusing predominantly on the competitive element, leaving a lot of other stuff untouched. So in terms of, you know, secondary content, again, they leave a lot of stuff to the community, right? And that is not the greatest decision. Again, it's a wonderful story, right? What they've come up with, what the world they're building is fantastic. And like this post says, there are so many avenues that they could explore personally, right? Or even just outsource it, but have someone directly hired by LSS to run the YouTube channel, to run a lore channel, to produce, you know, little short novels or something like that in regards to all the extra information and extra opportunities that FaB has, right? At the moment, it is just 3 sets, a couple secondary products, and all the big events, right? Nothing else is really explored. Now, as much as we like to sort of, you know, joke about MetaZoo, if you look at what Mike did straight away with his card game, right, and all the secondary elements, yeah, that is a bit overboard, but it is someone that knows how to explore those different avenues and capitalize on your market, your player base, and the situations revolving around the card game, right? Playing cards. Crazy, worked, made his money. T-shirts, skateboards at some point, I'm pretty sure I saw, all the Christmas stocking stuffers and stuff like that, right? His audience were predominantly kids, or to some extent families, so he knew what he was doing and he capitalized on that. Now, LSS can go down that same route. Again, I think any sort of secondary lore memorabilia, be it books, be it little short stories, be it this and that, could really work. I think the community would latch onto that greatly, but we don't see that. We don't see merchandising to any great extent. And yeah, there is a love for the card game and a sole focus on the card game. But the biggest issue is the growth of FaB is so rampant, right? It's exponential. It's great. It is continuous, but it is rampant, and it is not being channeled into much, from my perspective at the very least, right? They're not expanding, they're building slowly, and their growth in terms of the player base and the community and what we want from them is outpacing what they can handle as a company. So again, it does fall back to what they're doing is more a argument of they don't have the manpower, right? The company's not big enough to be upscaled to the level of growth that the game has seen, the success that the game has seen, right? It very much feels like they're just trying to wade out these big tidal waves, right? The game took off. It had this lull for a little bit, and they thought they could recoup, they could expand slowly and build, but then another tidal wave, another crash. Not a bad crash, right? Just another influx of all this growth, and they're not truly prepared for it, right? Again, I wouldn't say their company is in the best position to handle the level of growth that the game has seen, to again explore those other avenues, to then create these different divisions for handling stuff outside of just the game development. In terms of his keynote speeches, right, I've brought this up time and time again. The level of information that is passed along, to me personally, is atrocious, right? It is not enough. Cool, we finally got a roadmap. That roadmap doesn't really tell us much, right? Again, it shows us a primary focus on the competitive elements, but even just spoiling the lore of the sets, right? This is going to be this set and this is going to be that set, rather than, again, just numbers, I think would have had a much greater impact. It would have helped everyone prepare and, would have given some better ideas of where the secondary market is heading. And again, we're all on this course where they know where they're going. We think we know where we're going, but there's that disconnect between the two, right? We can speculate, we can come up with all these interesting ideas, but at the end of the day, they know what they're doing, they know what they have planned, they're just not telling us. The other personal opinion of mine is a lot of what James is doing is just building hype, right? He's just there to build hype. I wouldn't even say he's necessarily selling the product, right? He's just there to build hype and excitement. And again, what they do creatively and what they do in terms of set design and exploring all these different avenues is fantastic. But at the same time, it leaves FaB not really grounded, and then the information we get is not grounded. And again, it just creates this level of disconnect between the two. Okay, number 2. Why on earth are there no pre-con CC decks for new players? The biggest barrier to entry as a new player is just fielding a deck that can simply play at the CC level. Having recently started playing Blitz and CC, I don't find the former to be nearly as engaging and fun. It takes hundreds of dollars to build a starting CC deck. I don't understand this at all. Yeah, this is definitely a very, very weird point. Again, Classic Constructed is the main competitive format, is the format with the, the highest prize pool, and therefore the greatest area of growth for the game. But again, we're coming on to 5 years where we had the first initial decks, right, for Welcome to Wraith, the launch, right, there was no unlimited version. And then since then, everything has been funneled to Blitz as the entry-level system. But then going from Blitz to Classic Constructed is not going to work because the playstyles are completely different. The way the games are run, right, and what works in Classic Constructed versus Blitz is again, highly different. So the idea that, again, you start with Blitz, you learn the game, and then you go to CC, well, you are most likely going to have to do this big pivot. And to facilitate such a pivot, right, pre-cons for Classic Constructed would be fantastic. Everyone in the community has been asking for them, since the inception. And yet here we are, still nothing. And it is really weird, right? Because at the very least, you just take a Blitz deck and you just, instead of 2 copies, 3 copies, instead of 1 copy, 2 copies. And again, you would have to do some refinement, a little bit of tweaking and balancing, but it wouldn't be that hard from my perspective, right? even just, I guess, slapping two together. But then you get into the issue where deck building, again, Flesh and Blood is so highly strategic, so mathematical to some degree, right? That deck building can be its own hurdle. So, giving a new player two blitz decks and saying, yeah, figure out what cards to cut and then go play Class Constructed isn't also the best solution, because there's still some extent of learning to be done for that. Number 3, thrashing new players at Armory events. I'm good with getting my teeth kicked in. I'm mentally prepared to suck for a while at FaB. Most people aren't like this. I met a fellow new player that has already quit and sold his cards because the only option to play is at these events. So you pay $10 to $20 to get nuked without prize or incentive every week. Yeah. So the modeling for events, right? Again, there's not a great way to handle it. There's been attempts. So for instance, the Melody prize kit for casual, it's kind of weird. Again, that was just so short-lived and there was just nothing after it. I personally thought we were going to cycle through all the roundtable heroes, but no, who knows when we get the next one. From the post, for all we know, it could just be another little box of Melody stuff, right? And Melody is a worthwhile promo, don't get me wrong, because everyone is, excited for it. But the level of support for casual is definitely a hard thing to sort of commit to, because it doesn't really fall on LSS. LSS can come up with ideas and do things that work and implement, systems to try and ease it. But at the end of the day, it does fall on the LGS for that point more so than anything else, right? It's up to the LGS on what events they run, what prizes they support. And again, see both sides. There are going to be LGSs out there that don't do things the way that LSS has intended, right? That don't necessarily give out prizes in the manner that they should be giving out prizes. There's always going to be that level of shadiness when you are just, giving these kits to other companies, so to speak, right, who have their own prerogative in terms of their business, and in terms of a casual kit, right? That then becomes a bit more of an issue, because, what degree do you charge for events? How do you filter out players? How do you ensure, it's only entry-level players? I mean, different tiers of competition could be an idea, right? A novice, your account has to be below X amount of experience, your rating. But again, there's easy ways to fudge that to, just create a new system, just to go somewhere else and crush new players. And yeah, it's this headache that I can see LSS not really want to partake in just yet. Because again, overall, I continue to just think that they will get to all this. They will be able to manage. The problem is just their company size towards what the game has grown to at the moment, right? They're not keeping up with one another, and they're not really taking the time to do that. We have their new office building being built, and I'm sure they're working on expansion, but at the same time, they're still trying to keep up with the growth of the game. And that is just, burning the candle at both ends. FaB seems to be on the edge of failure or success. You can't simultaneously be a competitive game and build little incentive or helpful mechanics to cultivate new players into the community. I love FaB and I love this community. I hope it can grow despite these issues. Cheers, a noob. Edit, I don't know why I'm obsessed with... My apologies? I don't know why I'm obsessed with ... Oh, right, adding the ... in. Okay, interesting. My apologies. Also, a green thumb isn't what I thought it was. Oopsie. So I'm guessing it just means a new player. What does green thumb actually mean? But yeah, onto the juicy part, right? The comments, and again, the different perspectives and ideas and opinions, which again, I just find fascinating. I just like to broaden my knowledge and see things from as many angles as possible, right or wrong. It's just growth to me. As for point 2, just combine... Isn't that funny? Just combine 2 blitz decks. Oh, and they got downvoted. Interesting. I can't believe this has negative karma. The complaints from OP is the biggest barrier. In the first case, the objection to buying multiple blitz precons and merging them is that having to buy multiple copies of the blitz decks and put together a functional CC deck is just too confusing. Yeah. Again, it's similar to the way that a lot of the secondary areas are being tackled by LSS, where it's left up to the community rather than cutting out, that little step and that little bit of variability. Same can be said for this whole concept. Just sticking 2 blitz decks together is a decent idea, but we would love LSS to step in and make it a lot easier. In the second case, the objection to buying multiple blitz decks and merging them is that a player wouldn't actually end up with a reasonably competitive CC deck by doing this. This isn't a sensible objection because you don't end up with a reasonably competitive blitz decks by buying, I've thought about this for a little bit too. I don't know how you'd feel, but what if we got, precon decks that were functional only as precon decks, right? So the cards were powerful, not overly powerful. They slot somewhere in the middle, right? Or at the very least, they are actually just competitive viable. But all the cards are only usable in that deck, right? So I don't know if you do a new hero and then you make the majority of card specializations. You maybe keep a few so that the player can tweak and change the pilot of the deck to a different hero. Swap out the specialization cards. But overall, just really, really refine and contain the cards, right? So they don't have that spillover impact like the classic battles and is it glistening Steelblade? There's so many Steelblades I get confused. It doesn't have that spillover effect where it impedes the secondary market, because you don't want people just grabbing the blitz decks and playing with them. But at the same time, we do want, a level of product that can just be taken straight to the competitive events, because there isn't anything entry level. So why am I buying a blitz deck when the thing I'm going to take it to is not the level that the deck is suitable for? Is that somewhat understandable? The other way to do it is like championship decks. Again, just not carbon copies. Again, cut out some of the more expensive cards. There are, definitely viable switch outs, right? That can lower the price tag of most competitive or say championship decks. Or even, again, the reprint style. I mean, the white border sort of showed that people don't really care. It's more just getting the cards to play with is the big factor for pricing, not so much the stylization or those sort of ideals that LSS had initially. But it is worth a thought and worth, again, expanding upon. Overall, I still really think that we should be seeing a greater number of products. Again, the design of FaB is so expansive, so open-ended, that I don't see any issue with, again, going into all these different products. Not necessarily, sets, but a ton of secondary products to, again, just enable all these other areas to catch up with the competitive scene. Because, again, it's just going to get more and more away from everything else, especially if LSS are, pouring the majority of their resources into it. PvE has always been thought as the best casual medium, but it keeps getting pushed back in favor of, refining and trying to perfect the competitive scene and events. FaB fails to snag me, even after significant hype on my part and love of the mechanics, was the arbitrary need for equipment cards. Where in MTG and many... Okay, sorry, I know what they're going to say, so we'll just stop it there. Yeah, so card compatibility. Again, you can take MTG, you can play any color, but more importantly, any color card can go into any deck, right? You can do tricolor, you can do duo color, you can do 4 quadricolor, right? And all of it might not necessarily work, but the simple fact that every card has applicability to everyone is such a big factor. Again, same thing can be said for Yu-Gi-Oh! While you have archetypes, there are no inbuilt restrictions that prevent you from mixing X card with X card. Pokemon, all these other card games, right? It's a core thing. Even the new One Piece with their system. Well, it started out as 3 colors, right? Compared to FaB's rampant growth into numerous heroes. And then, again, their next step, rather than pouring more heroes and then adding subtypes, was to come out with duo class colors. So your leader, I think it's called in One Piece, right? Again, like FaB determines what cards you can put in your deck, but it's not as expansive as what FaB has become. And that is such a big difference when getting into the game, when digesting the cards and understanding, again, how to actually do effective deck building. I love equipment so much as an idea. It's such an awesome game mechanic, but God, I wish it weren't so expensive, and also kind of loses its coolness when every single player runs the exact same equipment for their hero. Yes, diversity is another sort of big thing, and it's still sort of open-ended how they're exactly going to tackle it. From the greater number of heroes, I would assume that is how they're going to try and make greater diversity. Is you'll have 4 warriors and they'll do different things, and that's your diversity element, rather than again, the little bits of, well, you can run this style of Bravo or this style of Bravo. Because, yeah, again, it's just, there is so many areas to FaB to work on, develop, and grow that it is this losing battle in perspective to the size of LSS, right? They're building a monster that is really getting away from them, from my perspective. And all we can do is wait for their company to catch up, right? I think that's the other big thing is, again, while I do agree with a lot of this, I can also understand that it's the uncontrollable elements that has led to this point. And maybe LSS just needs to take the time to work on them before, again, trying to really kick off the game, right? Again, it's cool to see more resources be pulled into the competitive scene, but as a company, I think they have a lot of growing still to do. Where are we up to? Game continues to grow exponentially every year, the company as well. Your rate always finds a way to cry about new players. Yeah, new players is the lifeblood, right? Even to LSS, new players are people who have small collections who will spend more, and you can get them in the door. And again, you can sell them new things or old things. And altogether, you need both new players and experienced players, right? FaB does not have a reputable avenue for new players. It has very minuscule things that aren't really pushed either. Again, the print-to-play IRA deck. How many new players have actually used that? I would be very, very curious. LSS could certainly step up a few things, and they've been pretty transparent about why they're focusing on other things and what they would like to eventually do. They're building their new office with new staff and team focusing on non-competitive aspects of the game, and all the rest got to give small indie companies time to manage and grow. Yeah, definitely, right? And remember, you can't please everyone as the game grows. Every decision they make is going to ruffle some feathers. Yeah, fully agree with this half of the comment. It is just a time thing. Again, the growth on FaB, I don't think was within their expectation. They had that big boom, then they thought it tapered off, and then another big boom. What can you do? 3, how do you suggest they solve this? This is a competitive card game. How do you force players not to try and win? And would we even want that ideology? My take is this. Official events have prizes, therefore people who've played for a long time play these at a try-hard level of prize, is my suggestion. Official events where only prizes are packs or rating. I have a super tough time mentally getting past the losing a lot phase. It's a game that really rewards knowing what your opponent does / is going to. Yeah, the knowledge base for FaB is so extensive. Again, to understand the different matchups, what they're playing, the subtle differences, it is a lot for a new player to grasp. And as the game has grown, right, we've just continued to upscale everyone. Everyone knows what's going on. Again, you go back a few years where it first came out, and there was rationale to running different colors, and we didn't really have the expansive knowledge on the sort of mathematical side, or I should say the true value and breakpoints of cards. In terms of this whole string, yeah, it is super, super hard to handle. Again, if you come up with, entry-level events, well, how do you stop people participating who aren't, again, experienced and there to win? If you take away the incentive, why would people continue to keep up with all the knowledge and all the extensive research, right, that it does take? And if you don't think it does, at a decent competitive level, again, the meta, call it 4 decks even. You still have to learn those 4 decks. You have to learn how your play has to shift towards them, what cards to swap in, swap out, again, what cards they're going to run, what they do, and it's just a codex of knowledge that you have to memorize. And it constantly shifts. Again, with the Living Legend system trying to rotate more heroes, it's just going to continue to shift. And while it will help, bring down that point so that those entering the game and those in the knowledge both have to start again to some extent. You still have the mechanical side that all the people in the know already have developed, right? Versus that of someone new who has to come and learn all those mechanics, learn the deck building aspect, and then learn all the knowledge about what decks are in the meta. And once more, while you can compare this to any other TCG, and these are all problems found in every single TCG, FaB is its own beast because of how the game is developed, because of how the design is shaped, and because, again, how open-ended everything about FaB can be / will be, right? There just really isn't a grounded base, to me at least, in terms of the design, right? Obviously, we have clear concepts and we have main ideas that they are developing. But again, it's that simple fact that they can just pivot whenever they want. They can come up with something completely new, something exciting and fun, but completely new to then, break down, understand, and really figure out how it impacts every single other element within the game. All right. Anything of note sticking out? Nope. I don't see how 3 is any different than any other card game. Yep, anyone in almost every single card game can join with a starter deck, get destroyed. It's basically what we've already been talking about. There's a lot of issues of messaging. LSS had said that Blitz is a real format, and it even has more heroes than CC, but lots of players still see it like a casual new player. Okay, again, cut it short so we can discuss. It doesn't matter whether Blitz is a real format or not, or a casual format or entry format. What it comes down to is the level of prize support, and to put it bluntly, Classic Constructed is like 10 times the value of any other format. Again, Living Legend, if they really wanted to kickstart it and incentivize people to participate and play, then the prize pool at Worlds should have been a lot bigger, right? It was like a percentage, 1%, 1 single percent of the prize pool for Classic Constructed. If that doesn't put into perspective the level of incentive to practice, play, and learn Classic Constructed over every single other format, nothing else does. CC is seen as the real format, and it's the one most marketing centers around, but there's no easy way in. Your best bet as a new player with no card game experience is just to buy a Blitz deck and buy a bunch of packs and hope that you pull an adult hero plus 20 good cards to add onto your precon, and given how rare adult cards have become, it's really not a great option. Yeah, they shouldn't be Majestics. Again, there is a much better way to handle it. You don't want them to be tokens? Fine. Make them rares, make them commons. Make it a insert into every single box. You buy a box, you get all the heroes of the set. There just isn't a product available for Classic Constructed, despite Classic Constructed, like this person is emphasizing, the main pushed aspect of playing Flesh and Blood. I still think the basic kit, I still think the basic, starter kit, 3 Command and Conquers, 1 Tunic, should be widely available and affordable is the most important thing. So I don't know if they're saying a basic starter kit should be made, or if just getting 3 copies of Command and Conquer and 1 Tunic should be more available than what it is, right? So again, it goes back to their policies. They don't want cards to be heavily devalued. They're trying to come up with realistic alternatives. It's just going to be slow, because again, we have to circle around to every single different hero. It seems like every set is getting a Command and Conquer alternative, right? But we still have so many heroes just to approach with it, and it's just going to take a whole bunch of time. Again, 3 sets to me is not enough to handle the basis of the game, the amount of heroes that are already there, and they're adding more in. If they're adding new classes too, then again, it needs to be smaller sets, and we need a realistic time frame to circle around to everyone, right? I'll say it again and get blasted again, but cards are just too expensive. They will never rotate or ban any of the superior problematic cards, because anyone who actually spent what you have to play this game will lose their mind. The value on these cards has also been a hamstrung, their design philosophy as power creeping will also cause, so it's just, what do you do? How do you toe the line to make sure everyone remains happy, and who do you want to keep happiest? So you have a game that is very difficult to master, hard to compete without spending hundreds of dollars, with a stagnant design philosophy that will see the same equipment card slot auto-filled for the rest of the time, because people act like they're losing their retirement when cardboard loses value. And then your hero becomes non-player with Living Legend, a format nobody plays. Again, there is the opportunity to make it playable, but once again, it just comes down to incentive and how much of their resources LSS, allocate to the other aspects of the game, rather than just continuing to pump up Classic Constructed. Now, this whole little paragraph, let's read it again. So you have a game that is very difficult to master, right? But that's good in its own sense, right? I think a lot of us gravitate towards how strategic the game is. Hard to compete without spending, right? That is also an issue that's brought up. But then you go back to the other point where a lot of the cards you hold on to and you can reuse, and therefore they're more of an investment. And they're also not just a win more stylization, right? It takes both decent cards and decent skill. And sometimes you can make up for the cards with even better skill. With stagnant design philosophy, that will see the same equipment card slot auto-filled for the rest of the time. Again, it depends how crazy they go with hero design. Again, there is just so many questions still of what they decide to do, what the 15 heroes we get this year. This year is really, to me, going to be a big turning point to see how they are going to handle the game going forward. Again, you can get rid of this whole equipment burden where you have new heroes that have a completely different playstyle to the already existing, right? A little bit of crossover, but they require completely new equipment. Again, you maintain the equipment's use in the heroes that it's good in, but again, it's that level of diversity rather than getting something close to the OG hero. And it does circle back to their philosophy, right? So they want cards to always, to some degree, slot in the exact same place, right? They want to reprint heroes that are similar and still make use of a lot of the key cards, again, so it doesn't impact that value and a lot of their philosophies. But at the same time, that creates this bad cycle where the only real other alternative is to just create new classes. Again, if you create new classes, then you're just increasing the expansive nature of FaB even further. $10 events hurts when you're a new player. Players don't want to play to go and lose. FaB should have a league format where everyone who plays gets something, and extra promos such prizes go to the winner. Yeah. Again, there are so many ways to handle it, but it just falls back to LSS just aren't a big enough company, right? They just don't have the resources, company-wise, to implement all of this just yet. I think the biggest barrier to entry is the decks have specific mechanics that are intricate to learn, which is fine for your own deck, but a huge ordeal to learn entire meta. Yeah, so we touched on that before. I didn't start winning until I played in Talishare and learned about specialization cards and all the other decks. Agree with the YouTube content points. We need content that can bring in casual players. Yeah. Again, LSS should take a personal interest in developing this, right? It's great to leave it up to the community, but again, it's just so variable, right? And it's not like you're going to have, big experienced YouTubers come in and make content that, a lot of people think is sensational quality. You're going to have people who use FaB as their medium, right? Like me, and grow as we create the content. And then it just goes back to that whole time aspect where the overall growth of FaB has overshadowed every other aspect. And as great as that is, it's also, in this case, leads to a lot of issues that will just take time to address. I feel like FaB is the Dark Souls of TCG. The fact that it's so deep and intricate makes me want to train harder at the game to get rewards of feeling actually good, not just lucky at draw and being able to outsmart people. Probably not what everyone wants, but that's the point of playing an easy game at competitive level. Sorry, but what's the point? It's kind of normal to beat everyone, especially with random common cards. I did horrible. Yeah. How long is this? Ooh, getting close to 40 minutes, which means we're at the point where words start to bleed together. Okay, let me just scroll through and find some comments of interest. Never mind, right in front of us. Also, the content creators aren't as easy to digest as with, say, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or MTG. First I found is the rare video the professor does from the game. The ones I have seen FaB are just hard to follow due to less editing, etc., which isn't helping them out. Yeah, because again, the majority of us are going to be new to this whole content creation, and it's just time. The whole split with CC being the main mode, and then all the intro stuff in Blitz is insane. Yeah. It annoys me to no end that getting CC heroes is such a bother too, and if anything, getting access to them has been made harder, not easier. Third point is, LGS stuff. I'm sort of committed to the reality that FaB won't be a casual game anytime, so it doesn't have to be. But again, if it's not a casual game, then the intro products have to be, again, geared towards the competitive scene, right? You're just creating this big disconnect. Here's your products. Now you go away, go do your own thing, learn the game somehow, come back, and then join us for the competitive scene. The problem is, how can you make the game casual? Yeah. This leaves us PvE, but again, it just keeps getting put on the back burner, unfortunately, right? But again, from the company perspective, why would you create this whole other division, this whole other aspect that you then have to work on, refine? You're just doubling your workload when, again, classic constructed, the competitive element, the competitive scene is the biggest, marketable point for LSS. It is within their best interest to just focus on that for the time being, till again they have the resources and the labor, right? And their company has grown to the correct proportion to then divide and create these different areas, right? Why experiment with something new that, again, could fail when you can just continue pulling all your resources into what has been the most successful element of FaB? Okay, CC precons could ease two of the biggest turnoffs for potential new players: access to an affordable CC deck and heroes that either already being LL or hitting LL right after. Yes, so I get what this person is saying, right? Sorry, my brain reads ahead, and that's my own disconnect, right? That leads to poor speech. So the idea that a hero hits LL for Classic Constructed, and then we get a precon launch of its replacement, I think is a fabulous idea. It's a much better idea, right? You can still have these sets come out as the way to support them, right? To improve upon their archetype. But again, just make them readily available would be great. But the big but is then it goes back to the Living Legend system, and how do you plan and account for that? Do you just have already at the back of your mind, every single replacement hero developed, and you can just pull the trigger whenever you want? Again, I don't think LSS are at the point where they have the resources to do that. What's wild? Yes, the hero decks from Welcome to Wraith, and then again push Blitz, but grow the classic constructive competitive elements. As someone that's been playing for over a year, I consider myself just out of being a new player. Totally agree with most everything you said. The game scares off a lot of new players, but I think even its core gameplay does. FaB is a tough game to understand, even without all the extra costs. Its learning curve is super steep, and then you toss in matchups. It attracts players that enjoy the learning curve, enjoy the pure exhaustion that comes from a match, and I think those types of players also just enjoy the other stuff that makes FaB so tough and even expensive. I still suck at the game, only just having gone 2 for 1 for the first time this past week, and I recognize that I can't go much further than this because I'm just not smart or competitive enough, and that's fine with me. But I 1000% respect that not everyone is okay with that. Yeah, so again, it's its own thing. It's not trying to follow the majority of molds that other TCG games have, and that's fine, right? Again, that's what's drawn a lot of us to it. But we're, again, in the in-between, because there's not really a product model, right, that has been developed for that, to facilitate everything FaB wants to be. They have to use the old style of product models, and it to some extent needs another rework, a FaB 3.0, right, and to become its own thing. Again, the crack shuffle play, great idea. When are we going to get it again? Not sure. We're getting a new iteration in heavy hitters, and overall we're still just really experimenting, because again, it is just its own thing, and there are so many problems to solve and so many ideas to flesh out towards FaB and every single aspect of it, not just the game, not just the competitive scene, but even just the market side of the company and their design in terms of sets rather than just cards. Been following FaB since the beginning. The fact that newer TCG games have come out since then have multiple larger audience is concerning, to say the least. I assume they're probably regarding One Piece. What else? Nothing to me really comes to mind. I'm trying to think of like the newsletters I get from stores and what is on offer there. I know FaB has dropped off for a lot of them, right? They're not on the pages, unfortunately. One Piece is the only one that really comes to mind, and you can't compete with One Piece, right? You have a huge pre-existing fan base when everything for FaB is brand new, and a lot of the card games, right, have the pre-existing cohesion with X community, right, that they can latch onto. Whereas again, FaB lore aspect, completely homebrewed card design, gameplay, again, all developed by LSS. And yeah, it's just a new attraction. Not every TCG needs to be the most popular or breaking the big three. TCGs can just be somewhat popular and survive just fine. Doesn't need to outpace MTG, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, nor does it have to beat any of the new ones, assuming you're referring to something like One Piece or Digimon. Yeah, again, both have those huge existing fandoms. FaB is doing great and steadily growing today. I would say it's probably a bit better than steady. Not every new TCG needs to be the most popular. I think LSS does this for the only good feeling. Yeah, there are so many choices that they could have made, again, to try and capitalize on FaB, to try and just turn it into a greed machine. The fact that they have, again, been so restricted in what they have chosen to develop and pursue in the avenues, it speaks to they are doing this because they enjoy their game. They don't want to soil it with trying to just chase popularity. Be realistic and honest with yourself here and think about what you are actually saying. The fact that LSS does not create an environment that welcomes new players is positively correlated as to why it isn't that popular in the first place. We all have vested interest in FaB succeeding, but for the betterment of the game and for it to last and not go bankrupt. Like, it's not going bankrupt anytime soon. It's not. Even if they never touch the casual element or the welcome, right? Again, the competitive scene and its growth rate is more than enough to sustain and, create an interest for people to pick up the game, go through the grueling trials of learning. Again, it's not for everyone. It's not going to be a huge attraction of, tons and tons of players, but it will definitely be picked up for people pursuing that and all the rewards that come with the really successful competitive scene. With the way card games going, yes, you do have to be the big three because stores, you act as if FaB hasn't been in stores for years and doing just fine. It's more just about the financial side. We'll leave that to someone else. Okay. Number 3 is on the LGSs. Yep. We've already gone about point 2. Okay, this one looks interesting. While I think LSS can do better in this regard, the FaB community does a pretty good job of filling the void. It shouldn't have to. Right? Again, leaving so much up to the community is great, but bad. Right? You can create those intermediary areas where rather than just, the content creation when it's in the real interest of LSS, right? In terms of, a new set coming out, hyping up its release and sales to, again, expanding it so that you have someone you have a vested interest in, you're feeding them the information in terms of lore and they can produce that content versus someone who, has the inner workings of design and can, again, produce that style of content rather than just leaving it everything, well, not everything, but leaving a big portion of the market aspect to the community and the community just doing whatever they feel like at whatever point, right? Anytime they have had that vested interest, it's had huge success. Again, look at the Professor, look at, again, the hype built around the spoiler season, right? All that is fantastic. I would say the level of support for content creators does seem to have dropped off a little bit, right? Compared to when they were getting their foot in the door. And it's just them just leaving it up to the community, when I do think they should take a more vested interest personally in, again, fleshing out all those aspects. Pre-constructed CCs are a bit of a challenge. I don't think they're going... I don't think they're the good intro everyone thinks they would be for a new player. Well, I think they could probably do it. I think it's way more likely that they'll end up as something similar as to intro decks that MTG used to make. Very useful out of the box and better just to part out. Not to mention CC acts as a very tough question for newbies right off the bat, sideboarding, and it's way harder for them to figure out where they went wrong over the course of a CC game. This all, to me, though, falls back on design, what they choose to design and put into X deck. Again, they can heavily limit its utility to, being able to transition to X other hero and do all that. And they can make it all self-contained, and then they can up the power so it is useful to a new player, right? Make it incredibly simplistic to learn and utilize, right? But have, a half-decent fighting chance. Yeah, then it comes back to, well, if this deck is easier to use, why wouldn't everyone just use it? And again, I can think just can't edit the deck maybe or something like that. Again, it's just more of a design aspect than anything else. Oof. I might have to break this up. Oh, we are at the bottom. Cool. Okay. Let me gloss through the rest and see if there's anything else I want to talk about. This is obviously a lot longer than usual videos. If you're still around, thanks. Okay, I think this will be the last point, right, for us to go over, at the very least. It takes hundreds of dollars to build a starting CC deck. I don't understand this at all. Just a note here. Though I completely agree with your overarching points, this just isn't true. FaB rates my current deck at $270, and it's already fairly well tweaked in what it wants to do. If I replace 2 pieces of equipment with adequate low budget replacement down to $170, if I took out 3 big swings, if you cut contents and figured out the alternatives, right, you get the price down even lower. The issue with this is from a new player perspective, right? Again, not being a great intro product or anything like that to learn, they're going to net deck, they're going to see the big expensive decks, and they're not going to know how to do this, how to tweak it, how to cut cards, because that's not in their program. They haven't learnt yet. They're trying to figure out the deck that they can take to their main events, which are going to be competitive, right? A deck they want to have a solid chance at, deck they want to learn, and again, the majority of videos are going to be its best version, and all the copies online, or at least the majority that they're going to have easy access to without doing a lot of research and looking around, are going to be some of the most expensive versions of X deck. While it's understandable for you to be able to do this, for anyone who's in the know to rationalize, well, I can change this card for this card. From a new player perspective, they just don't have that skill set yet to be able to take a 270 deck and cut it down to below $100, right? It's just not within their means. On a different note, our community is taking a very proactive approach. This is just more LGSF, which is great, but again, it's just on the LGS, and there are so many, and each is going to be their own little thing. It's fantastic if your LGS has come up with great systems for onboarding new players, for teaching new players, but at the same time, right, it's just one LGS out of the broad spectrum, and the only way for, that to become a more abundant system, right, any of these points that you're listing, is up to LSS, right, to supply X kits to be used in a scenario that handles any of this. Your deck is cheap because you chose a cheap character. Yeah, that's another thing, right? Understanding that X character has X budget, has X playstyle, has X this. Again, so expansive. Just more stuff for a new player to digest and understand without having a system or product that holds their hand through it. He's only on the cheaper end, so it's more just about Rhino. I agree with pretty much everything you said, but this is objectively false. Your equipment might not be optimal, but you can do a number of very fine decks for sub 100. If you're spending hundreds of dollars, you're not building a Star Seeds deck, you're building a full meta deck with all legendaries. Again, how can you expect a new player to build a starter CC deck? They're getting into the game. All they have at their disposal is decks that have performed well, right? They don't have the mentality or the understanding to refine a deck, to build a starting deck. This is where LSS has to come in, where a product needs to come in and act as that starting deck. This is the same thing as just going to them, giving them a box full of cards and getting them to build a deck. They just don't have the know-how. So the next closest thing is a fully fleshed out deck, not one that they can then rationalize, well, swap out this card for this for that. It's just, to me, it's unrealistic to expect that of a new player without, again, some sort of tool at their disposal. And even if there are, hundreds of resources online, again, a new player coming in is not going to do all this extra research, all this extra learning, because that's just off-putting. It's up to LSS to facilitate all of that. I think it's about community. That's more about the LGS stuff. One Piece, Yu-Gi-Oh!, MTG, they all exactly have the same issue, which, to be honest, is the norm with all TCGs. Yes, but again, it's the level of knowledge and the expansive nature of FaB that really, really takes all these problems that plague every single TCG and dials them up. Okay, we're at the bottom anyway, so we'll just read the rest. New play here started just after Dusk Till Dawn. The first point, definitely agree. LSS needs to step up their marketing and their production quality. The second and third, I did encounter when I first tried to join Armory. My LGS led me. Okay, so again, right? this is just a personal perspective. There are things that LSS could do for an LGS to do this, but at the end of the day, it's just luck of the draw, so to speak, wherever you live and wherever you're going. Game took a nosedive after Lord of the Rings came out. MG has completely taken back over. Many never looked back. The lack of sales on TCG is alarming and has been considered abandoning ship. When I look at it, always some collector group making larger buys. Again, this is true, right? You can follow the money, and the money will lead you away from FaB, will lead you away from new TCGs to something consistent, right? Something that's been proven. It's the same as, again, stock market going on. Something that is insanely new and has this huge upside but a huge risk versus something concrete. What I would say is, again, look at the competitive side, right? Competitive growth within FaB and all that is a great sign for the health of Flesh and Blood. Sales, yeah, is always going to impact that. They need some way to, again, sell products. They could go down different avenues with events, but they're a TCG company and their products in their best interest, so they either need something that can sell it to people who want the product, and currently that's the expanded slot where you get people to open and supply the secondary market. That's the big draw at the moment. Is it the correct thing to do? No, but at the same time, pivoting and then going back to, again, the standard way of selling and moving standard sets is just not going to work with the Living Legend system. So you need to come up with something else. I really want this to change, but I can't force new people to like the game. Need to get popularity back. Uprising was awesome. Now even that is tanking. Any insights or replies are appreciated in advance. Again, like the majority of this post, while I do agree with a lot of the points, I do think FaB is in a precarious place. I think all of it, though, is just going to take time, right? LSS's prerogative at the current time should be their company growth. I think building their stronger foundations is going to lead to the correction of a lot of these problems. The easiest way for them to do that right now is to continue to pull resources into the system that has worked, the system that is driving their game, and that is the competitive scene, more specifically Classic Constructed, right? And then because, again, that's just, working out the kinks, pouring in more resources and letting it do its thing, they then have the time to build up their company. And once that's all done, then they can go and tackle all these problems. But at the end of the day, I do still just think the level of growth that FaB has seen, especially for, again, a new IP, right? Something not chained to any other pre-existing fandoms or ideas, is fantastic. But it has exceeded what their company is capable of in its current iteration. And all it's going to take is time. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. See ya.